Hi, welcome to Personality Yoda, live from the UK. We are so excited to have you with us. This is a show about all things personality and how to apply it to your world. My name is Becky, and I'm here with Steve, the Jedi Master himself. Steve, how are you today?
I'm very well, thank you so much, Bex. Although I've just had a big sip of my hot tea and burnt my lip, so obviously I have such a high pain threshold being an ENTP that basically that won't be an issue for anyone else. But I will soldier through with some chocolate buttons to help me.
The word prima donna comes to mind, but I'm sure that's not relevant at all.
High maintenance, I think, is the word we use.
High maintenance, yeah. I love it. Tell me what's going on in the UK. Third gear, update us.
Third gear. I know you like third gear, don't you, really? So we are now officially out of lockdown, although nobody would really notice the difference. But I think the big celebration is that I have now been for my third business lunch 3 days running. So that really is a joy to be able to go out and have a business lunch rather than sit at home all on my own. So yes, everything's heading back to normal. We're in the middle of winter. The weather's not very nice. Most people in England are pretty fed up with coronavirus and they're waiting for a vaccine. And I'm not sure whether we're slightly bullish that we are the first to get a vaccine and beat the Europeans and the Americans. I think one alternative theory is that they've deliberately allowed us to go first, so we would be the guinea pigs with the first vaccine. They'll see what works and then roll it out elsewhere. So be careful what the British government claims too soon would be my slightly cynical British approach, but there we go.
If we start twitching on any of the future shows, you'll know why, basically.
Yes, there's someone who is now, as somebody who's now over 50, hard to believe I know to the millions of viewers around the world. Apparently, I will get a vaccine earlier than other members of my family, which means there's got to be some perks for being an old git. And whenever I'm out with Ray here, we walk around Gerrard's Cross or Chapel St. Peter. It alternates between people thinking I'm the classic Gerrard's Cross male who's got a young bride, or actually that Bex is one of my elder daughters. So either way, I think one way I come out as, I don't think I come out good on either one of that. I'd rather have you as a daughter, Bex. That's what I'm saying.
Thanks. Or colleague, actually, also works, which I love.
Thank you.
Steve, final question on that one. Golf courses, what's the latest? Have you managed to survive without a golf course open?
Golf courses are open, but my business partner is such a taskmaster that basically she's insisted that I don't go and play golf. That's not technically true. It's more that there is only a very limited number of hours of daylight, and I usually play on a Wednesday afternoon and a Saturday afternoon, and it's dark by 4 o'clock in the UK right now. So with so much going on, I just decided that I would wait for my Christmas holidays before I dusted off my golf clubs. And even though I now find, thanks to the World Handicap System, I'm now a 5.4 handicapper, which is like scandalous, which means I'm actually going to have to play off 5. So obviously that means nothing to the vast majority of you, but to me, it's I'm now an elite golfer, apparently, believe it or not.
I think you were an 8 when you started handicap-wise, weren't you?
10 I started at. One more and I can be a professional. 4, I can be a pro.
What does that allow you to do if you get to 4?
I think you can go through the PGA teaching professional to actually go on the seniors tour. I think I'll be 55 to go on the seniors tour. So if all goes well, I'm kidding myself, honestly, but hey, who knows? I'm losing.
You're playing golf in the seniors. It's a good life. I love it. So last time we were talking around specifically nurturers and how to help them increase their influence. Do you want to give us a really quick recap on where we got to and kind of the things that we were talking around before we go into this week's very exciting edition where we're talking about guardians and how to help them increase their influence?
I'm going to share my screen here, Bex, with you. So there we go. Then you can let me do that. So I think if you remember where we were last week, we were talking about this idea of how we grow influence, but also how we undermine influence. And we looked at nurturers, who are my favorites, by the way. I have a bias to nurturers, and I put out into, for those of you who listen, I said any nurturer, first voice nurturer who's brave enough to reach out and find me on social media, I would set up a free 20-minute coaching clinic with you. What's hilarious, of all the people who did, half of them were connectors dressed up as nurturers. So nurturers, the offer still stands. I had some amazing times with some amazing people around the world. So it won't offer to any other voice, but if you're a nurturer, then you'll always have bias. Because what we're saying is to go, how you build influence is hugely important in the new world. understanding the mechanics of influence, how you build it, and critically, how you can lose it. So that's basically the premise. And we're doing this kind of masterclass through the episodes. Today's going to be Guardian, everything you ever wanted to know about Guardians, but we're afraid to ask. Hopefully, so you can understand both for yourself, but potentially also for those maybe you lead, those in your family, those that you know, this is a resource that you can help them with, or actually you can be more understanding, shall we say, of some of the challenges that your average Guardian will face in establishing their influence. So there we go. Is that a good enough introduction, Bex?
Yeah, brilliant introduction. Okay, so moving on to nurturers. By the way, moving on to guardians. By the way, if anyone has any questions around influence specifically for guardians, please do post those in the chat box, and we'll pose them to Yoda as we go through and get him to answer those. Not even just for guardians. If you have any for other voices as well, please do post those, and we can use them for later shows. Fantastic. So the first question I'd love to ask you is all around, what are the barriers to establishing trust for a guardian?
Great question. Didn't we ask that one last time for nurturers? You obviously learned well.
It's a really good question, so I thought I'd ask it again.
So trust is based on this issue. So if you imagine you meet somebody for the first time, you're keen to establish trust. Remember, 90% of first impressions are made in the first 90 seconds of meeting somebody. So that is knowing how to show up well and give yourself a best chance. So trust is always unlocking, if you remember, the sequential filters of character, chemistry, competence, and credibility. And if you think of the old bike lock or your locker, which had those little dials, you had to line up the numbers to unlock the code. That's the best analogy I know for helping people unlock trust with someone they're meeting for the first time. Interestingly, you're not trying to go through their walls of self-preservation. You're not trying to go, how can I be your best friend immediately? How can you give me huge influence and impact in your life? That's not the way that influence is built. Trust is the foundation upon which you can build future influence. So I'm going to ask you the same question, Beck. So get ready. You're going to tell me which of these you think is the biggest issue for a guardian. So remember the filters. Character. Do I trust you? Are you a person of integrity? Can I actually bank on what you're saying? That's the questions for character. Chemistry. Do I like you? Do I connect with you? Do I enjoy spending time with you? Competency. Are you competent? Are you confident in your competence? And do you have a proven track record of success? And credibility is, are you able to take your competency and apply it to the specific needs that I have in my world so that your competence becomes credibly relevant and I feel that you're treating me as a unique individual, not trying to just treat me like you did everyone else, because everyone wants a customization of some description to make them feel that actually you have truly heard them. You're not just selling whatever you sold last time. So character, chemistry, competence, credibility, you have to unlock all of them. Let's work our way through. So character for a guardian. What are guardians the champions of? Truth, stewardship of resources, people of enormous integrity, alignment of people, systems, resources. Basically, they are the most reliable, consistent, disciplined people. When they say something that they will get done, it is like a bond of the Bank of England, or maybe not the Federal Reserve. That's not quite so reliable. Let's not go there. So when it comes to character, Bex, is character going to be a barrier to trust for a guardian, do you think?
Less so.
Never. Because basically, guardians are the most trustworthy people of all of the personality types. So a guardian is always determined that you would know they are a person of impeachable character, or unimpeachable character even, that their word is their bond. So you remember, do I trust you? Are you for me? Are you a person of integrity? All of those flash green, green, green. Character will never be the barrier to trust for a guardian. Let's do competency. So think about a guardian, Bex, is competency going to be an issue for establishing trust with a guardian?
Very unlikely.
Very unlikely. Why?
Because they love to prove they can do it, and competence is a real driver to them. So being able to finish tasks well, complete the deadlines, complete the projects, whatever it is such a strong driver for them, an internal driver. They don't want to let the side down for anyone else. So competency, no.
So competency is everything to a guardian. I mean, to be deemed incompetent is the biggest personal crush to their whole ecosystem of well-being. Whatever a guardian wants to master, they will apply whatever amount of work, study, diligence, practice, because guardians hate incompetence in others and they hate it in themselves even more. So every guardian you meet, once they've said, I need to learn how to do this, guardians are never happy being average at something. They'll always choose to master the skill set, and they will keep on working at it in the most wonderfully disciplined, consistent way, because their greatest desire is that people go, this person is competent. Remember, are you competent? Are you confident in your competence? And do you have a track record of success? Guardians will be able to declare for you with really no spin, this is what my competence is. This is who I've done it with before. Here are my references. Here are my skills. If I couldn't help you, I wouldn't be here. And when a guardian says that, you know that things are good. So character and competency are never barriers to trust for the average guardian. Now, you were right to give a caveat that maybe for some, you might find there are some lazy guardians. I've not met many of them yet. It may be nurture in a certain part of the world, it's not cool, but by nature, guardians are deeply committed to being highly skilled, highly committed, because their biggest fear, as you said, is they don't want to let the team down. They don't want to be the one that doesn't deliver because they didn't work on their competence enough. So I'll have a little sip of my hot water and try not to burn my throat.
Hopefully it's cooled down by now.
There we go. It's cooled down a little bit, even for my pain threshold. So chemistry. Do I like you? Do I connect with you? Do I enjoy spending time with you? So come on, talk to me, Bex. Is chemistry, you can either say yes or no, you don't have to give me a big commentary. Is chemistry potentially a barrier to trust for a guardian?
I think it's the main barrier to trust.
You would be correct. Well done, young Padawan. So here's the thing. Every guardian's like, what, are you saying people don't like me? I said, no. Everyone respects you, but a guardian is always going to have to work on their tendency in the same way the nurturers are not incompetent, but competency was the issue. Guardians are often so task focused that they don't necessarily take the time to build the relational connection and the chemistry required to make somebody want to choose them as a long-term strategic partner. So if you think, I trust you, you're highly competent, the question people are often asking is when they're thinking about, do I trust you enough to maybe buy something from you or work with you? If it's a one-off transaction, in the end, you just want somebody to be incredibly competent and incredibly personal integrity. But if you're going to work with them in a service industry, in a consulting, coaching, in a team environment role, you will usually find that likability actually impacts people's choice of who they work with long term. So therefore, for guardians, learning how to be a human being, not just a human doing, is fundamental to the building of chemistry. I often say to guardians, you have to learn to waste time with people with no specific task outcome. And you have to be willing to be interested in parts of the person's life which are not really that interesting to you, or at least they should be, because the more you know about the person, the more you are interested before trying to be interesting with your product, the greater the opportunity for somebody to say, I like you, I enjoy being with you, and I connect and enjoy spending time with you. So often you'll find that guardians, when they're doing this, they'll often invite people to do a task with them. So rather than just sit around and go, how are you doing? They will often use task, shared interest, and activity to build chemistry. So a lot of guardians in business will play golf, they'll go fishing, they'll go shooting, whatever it might be, because that's an activity, because guardians are fundamentally doers more than beers. Just sitting around talking about how's the kids, how you doing, they can learn how to do it, but ultimately chemistry is the one which has the biggest impact that guardians have to work on. So last one is credibility. So Bex, come on, how important is credibility? What is it, and is it a no-brainer, or is that potentially an issue as well?
I would say it's an amber. I think they're generally quite good at it, but I would say they're not as strong as character or competency.
You really should be doing this. In fact, you are doing this. So
what can I say?
So they're always competent. Think of it as guardians are always competent, but the question is they're often risk averse. So therefore, guardians will often prefer to sell a solution that they already know works somewhere else. So actually, if it's the same product or the same service, guardians feel very, very comfortable selling and communicating and sharing the competency that they already know works, because they have empirical, concrete data and testimonial usually that it worked. Where a guardian can sometimes struggle, particularly in the world we're living in at the moment, where largely most things are new, most things are being customized. The digital revolution is transforming every area of our work, and that's just the software piece before we come on to artificial intelligence. So if you think for a guardian who likes to know something is tried, true, tested, reliable, data-based, the tendency will sometimes be to be conservative on the solution you offer, because you may know it's not quite as good as it could be, but at least you know it's safe. So guardians always have to watch that place where they're playing it safe with the solution, and the client or the person on the other side of you kind of goes, well, it sounds okay, but I'm not sure necessarily that's the best customized solution for my particular challenge. I know you're competent, but am I getting something which is truly reflecting who I am and my scenario and my need? Or is this basically you selling me a product that you sell to everybody? So there is your, what are the barriers to establishing trust for a guardian? There's a lot of information there. Please, you can go back and watch it. But character and competency are never the issues. Chemistry is almost always the biggest issue, unless, of course, they're dealing with another guardian, in which case everything goes fine. So when you meet somebody, by the way, who's like you, you'll find that your patterns and tendencies mirror theirs, which is why we always connect more easily with the people who are most like us. So therefore, for guardians, okay, 30% of people speak guardian, so therefore you'll find it's relatively easy. But chemistry and credibility will be the two areas that usually require a little bit of work. And again, just so you're clear, this is basically the tendencies of a guardian by nature. It's not reflecting you as a 50-year-old who's worked all your life at mastering these skill sets. It's saying which ones for you are by nature natural, which are in your 70%, and which ones will you have to work at intentionally, because if you are accidental, the tendency at times will undermine trust, or if not necessarily trust, it will undermine the ability for you to actually win the transaction, whatever that looks like for you. So there we go. That's my big overview of guardians. I hope that was helpful.
That's so funny what you say about being a human doing rather than a human being. My dad loves nothing, he's a guardian, he loves nothing more to call me than to talk about car practicalities. Like, what about the insurance specs? And, have you had the wheels done or the tires done? And I'm like, I don't know, just ask me how I am, not how the car is, which is hilarious. It's always around the task, which is so funny.
So the other tool that goes here, Bex, is this one. So we often have learn to be interested before interesting as a self-awareness lens. It's profound, particularly for certain voices. But the interesting thing is to go, learning to be interested is not just asking the questions about the thing that you are interested in. It's learning to be interested in the things the people you're seeking to establish a relationship with are interested in as well. So you can try, if you're a guardian, you can try, what's your latest power tool, or how you're enjoying the whatever it is you're doing. But actually that may not work. So what Bex is saying is sometimes to be interested in how are you being, or how are your family doing, or how was the vacation, or how was something which showed you've listened to about them in the last engagement. That's the key. So there's a little upgrade on the boomerang effect as well. Being interested before interesting is a foundational lens. Learning how to be interested in what the person is interested in is stage 2. And it's so hard sometimes. It's always a conscious competence when you're doing it with a voice which is different to yours. So particularly if they happen to be a nemesis voice, because what they're interested in is usually diametrically opposed to what you are interested in. And I happen to be married to a nurturer guardian, and I'm a pioneer connector. So I've learned over the years, me being interested in what I'm interested in is not the same as me being interested in what Helen is interested in. So there we go. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it makes complete sense. I love it. Okay, so that's in terms of how guardians undermine their influence or barriers to establishing trust for them. The next question I have is, how do they overcome the wall of self-preservation? Ooh, it's flashed off the screen there. We're going to add it on again.
My screen,
so how do they overcome the wall of self-preservation to build longer-term influence and impact?
Boom. Okay, I've shared my screen, so hopefully it will come up. Can you see me?
Sorry, there you go. That's my fault. Yeah.
There you go. Never blame your wingmen. So question, what's the wall of self-preservation look like? Well, every foundational voice has a wall of self-preservation. We all do. And if you think about it, in any engagement with someone, you have a wall of self-preservation, but so do they. And the holy grail of influence is not just transaction, but we can celebrate a transaction. But basically, the wall of self-preservation is always these three questions, which I can't click on there, which is fascinating because I'm learning how my technology works and doesn't work. So if I go back to this one and say, here are the three questions of self-preservation. They are the ones which unlock it for everyone. What am I afraid of losing? What am I trying to hide? What am I trying to prove, and to whom? And this is kind of higher level, because if you're brave enough to look in the mirror and ask yourself right now, where is my wall of self-preservation? What am I afraid of losing? What am I trying to hide? What am I trying to prove, and to whom? And you'll find that usually one of those questions at any given moment helps you understand where your barrier to influence and impact actually is. And that's long-term influence and impact, not just in the transaction and trust. So we're back inside the kind of the walls of those things. What am I afraid of losing? What I'm trying to hide? What am I afraid of trying to prove, to whom? For a guardian, if you think about it, what am I afraid of losing? I'm afraid of losing you think I'm competent. So guardians are often afraid of losing that sense that people see. What am I trying to hide? Most guardians are not trying to hide a great deal. They're very, very transparent people. They're very, what you see is what you get. If you ask the question, they'll give you the answer. They'll often tell the truth about themselves, whether it's good, bad, or indifferent. What am I trying to prove, and to whom, is usually the biggest issue for self-preservation to a guardian, because competency and the affirmation of those people's voice they value the most. So whenever you deal with a competency character like a guardian, it doesn't matter how many people tell them they've done a great job. There will always be a small number of people who they think are more competent than they are, whose opinion matters more than anything else. So therefore, 100 people could say Guardian did an amazing job. The two people they really need to hear it from basically don't say it, and that for a Guardian is a fail. So self-preservation is usually learning they have nothing to hide, nothing to prove, and nothing to lose. That is a level of self-awareness and security which very few people get to. So guardians, you have to be prepared to go, I'm not trying to prove myself to you, because there's nothing more off-putting usually when someone's gone, I already trust you, I'm bringing down my wall of self-preservation, but it still sounds like you're trying to prove yourself to me, that you are competent, that you are someone that I should be doing business with, when I already know you are. So guardians can often try, and in many ways keep trying to prove something that has already been done. So that's overcoming it, is actually knowing, Bex, go, I am competent. I will have a tendency to try and prove myself, but I don't need to, because in the end, once the person trusts me, once they like me, they will choose relationship with me because of who I am, not just because of what I do. So that's, for me, a little overview of self-preservation for guardians.
I love it. Now I have a couple of questions or thoughts. So Amy Mast has a great comment. She says, I'm just beginning to coach 3 different male guardian nurturer athletic coaches. They get along fine with each other, but struggle immensely when they feel their tried and true systems are being challenged by another. They enjoy maintaining control of what they have worked so hard to establish, and enjoying teaching the influence model. Lots of light bulb moments. Thank you so much, Amy, for posting that one in. Yeah, the influence model is so powerful for everything. Any thoughts on that one, Steve?
So it's what I would say, Amy, is that basically with guardians, Guardians love vision. So most people look at guardian nurturers and go risk averse, don't want to change, want to stay in control. The key is you have to allow them to be part of shaping the vision of the future and leveraging their skills as project managers, planners, communicators to help us get to that future. So if a guardian feels they're a victim of change, then they usually will become quite resistant to it because it doesn't feel safe. It hasn't been thought through. Maybe they haven't run pilots. They don't have enough data. So what I always try and do with guardians, I invite them into the very beginning of shaping the future. So therefore, what they're doing is they feel, so I'm a pioneer. So obviously, they see me as inherently dangerous and about to sell them something they don't want to buy. But the moment I go, guys, you have skills and expertise and know-how that I know I need. Why don't you be part of shaping the future with me? Because we're not going to do anything that you've not been part of. And that's the bit which most pioneers, connectors, even creative leaders, first voice, they see guardians as bad news and they try and manage around them. They try and manipulate it. So it's almost too late by the time the guardian sees the plan for the future. And then they get all frustrated with, well, you're just resistant to change. And I think that's incredibly harsh because the guardian is actually only ever asking difficult questions not to thwart your entrepreneurial plans. They're trying to make sure that we steward resources well, that we learn from what we've learned in the past, and we don't gamble recklessly with resources that actually always end up hurting people in the long run. So the more you celebrate the guardians, the more you honor their expertise and commitment, the more they relax. And then basically you show them usually rules of engagement and you basically let them ask their difficult questions. So Amy, thank you for asking that. Good luck. You'll find that basically guardian nurturers inherently suspicious when you start this stuff because it's like they've usually done it all before. That when you earn their trust, though, by the way, then they become the most powerful advocates for the system you are bringing. But they always appear in the beginning as if they don't believe you, or that actually they're wondering whether what you're selling is legitimate, or is this yet another piece of hot air, smoke and mirrors that costs a lot of money like we did last time.
Love it. Which really, that response really helpfully brings me on to another question which I have for you. It's a really good question, actually. It's one that I've been thinking about myself. And John from Norway asked it. And he says, what's your best advice to approach a guardian that is not aware that people experience their questions as critique and not as help? How do you help them see it?
So, John, many years ago, the answer would have been, you have to teach them. Nowadays, with Giant being what it is, you can leverage the influence you have with them to help them understand, well, what does being a guardian mean? Because if you use vocabulary and language at them, where it appears to them that you're labeling them and putting them in a box, they'll become resistant to it. So I always boast in my weakness when I want to create the context for somebody else to learn. Is it manipulative? I hope not, because I think it's genuine. So I would say is to go, do you know, whatever the name is, let's call that person Pete. Pete, do you know, I have been learning so much about what it's like to be on the other side of me. And I've been learning about the way that we can actually create environments where every voice or every person is celebrated in our team. And I've come to a completely new appreciation of what I think you bring, Pete. And I would love you to maybe understand a little bit of that and to understand a little bit about me. So giving them a link to a Guardian video from Giant and say, does this sound like you, is the beginning. But don't go and tell them this is your growth opportunity, because you really need to stop asking those difficult questions because I find them annoying. What you do is you celebrate their gifting, you actually own your own learning, and you invite them from a place of humility into a shared learning journey together, saying, genuinely, I want to learn how you and I can actually work together in synergy, not conflict. And I think I found a resource that's free. That will also appeal to the Guardians, by the way. And in the end, would you be open to watching a video or watching it together? Because I think this is going to help us together move forward. So does that see the difference between, you know, how you sell the opportunity rather than see it as a solution to your problem because you're a pain to me?
Yeah, and I guess the door to self-awareness and self-improvement, I guess, is always an internal door. We can't change everyone else. We can only change ourselves. So actually giving them the door or giving them the opportunity and signposting them to greater self-awareness through Giant TV is an amazing first step to them having those kind of like aha light bulb moments of, oh, wow, that's really what it's like to be on the other side of me.
Excellent.
Love it. Okay, so drawing to a close with one more question. How can other voices help guardians increase their influence? Any top tips?
Yeah, it's a fantastic question. So that's really, if you're leading a team or you've got a guardian who's in your house at home, or you're married to one, or you've got a friend who's one. So this is the application: is every person is more successful when their influence grows. So in the new world, influence is more valuable than intellect. There you go. It's not that intellect's not important. I usually come up with a tweet once a week for you, Bex, so I just make up on the spot like that one. But I believe the influence is more valuable than intellect, not instead of, but ultimately we are leaders in the new world because the influence we're able to bring. So when you are helping a guardian, one of the things would be is to go, guys, go and watch this version, go and watch this episode that Personality Yoda did that talked all about influence and guardians. So that would be one way. But the thing that I would say to you is this, is to go, learn how to celebrate what a guardian brings at their best to the world. So what is their superpower? Learn their superpower and actually call it up in them and give them permission and a platform to show that superpower, even if it's challenging for you. So in Voices, we have what's called rules of engagement. And we often say to the guardians, I always say to guardians, I think yours is the hardest role to play in a team, because you're always having to really appear to be slightly challenging, critiquing, but I'm going to call up your superpower and say, we need your voice, we need your challenge, we need your questions, we need the critique, because without it, we're actually going to miss out on the best possible outcome. And we're probably going to squander resources and ultimately squander people by having to go back and repeat it. So call up their superpower and also help them understand that basically on the other side of a guardian, it sometimes feels like an interrogation. So guardians, you have to be careful. The reason why, if somebody doesn't appear to be valuing what you bring or playing reckless with truth and resources, guardians become more critical, and therefore the questions become more challenging. And people often then experience that as an interrogation. And when that happens, you undermine your influence because people tend to avoid you. It's like, I don't want to go near that person. They're just hard work and they never seem to believe me, and they're always slightly negative, versus actually understanding that, you know, you may have 20 questions, but asking the 5 that are most valuable is a way that you keep your influence. So, you know, everyone else, champion the guardian, learn the superpower of the guardian, create the environments for the superpower of the guardian, and basically recognize that sometimes they need help when their tone and tact are not as appropriate as they could be. And we'll often use a vocabulary and language. Hey, this feels a little bit like an interrogation. Are you asking questions to gain clarity and help me? Or am I in your chair and basically you don't trust me and I'm being interrogated until you trust me a little bit more? So there were a few little clues, I would say, how other voices can really help the guardians, who I love, I value, I champion. And don't forget, they represent 30% of the population. So 43% nurturers, 30% guardians, 73% of the population speak nurture or guardian as their first voice out of 5. So it's really important, if you want to have influence, to be able to influence 3/4 of people.
So true. Such good advice. I absolutely love it. Rounding is off to a close, Steve. Which voice we're doing next week with regards to influence? It's your choice.
We're going to do connector. The reason
connector next. There you go.
The reason being is creative is always the most difficult to do, because there are 2 versions of creative. So we're going to do connector, then pioneer, then we're going to finish, when everybody's got the hang of this, with their creatives, because there's a creative feeler and a creative thinker, or a creative pioneer and a creative connector. So I hope that's enough for guardians. I've given you every piece of detail I have available, but if you have questions, then we will answer any questions you have. Additional clarity. I hope I've spoken the truth. I hope it's been liberating and life-giving.
Yeah, absolutely. As Steve mentioned, we'd love to hear your thoughts or any questions which you have for us on personality Yoda, which you'd like us to cover. So please do send those into that email address on the screen now. We'll pose them to Yoda next week. In the meantime, have a fantastic week. Any last words, Steve, that you'd like to close with?
None at all. It's a hot drink, and I've managed to get through without losing my voice. So thank you for that.
Well done. You always say no, and then you're like, oh, there is one thing.
Now,
Brilliant.
otherwise we'll have another thing.
Okay, we're closing off now. It's time to close. Have a fantastic week, people, and we will see you here same time, same place next Friday. Bye.